it is day one of the Science Forum South Africa hosted at the CSIR International Convention Centre in Pretoria. The forum serves as a public platform for debating the science and society interface. Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande is expected to give an opening address. For the latest, we cross now live to SABC News anchor Liezle Wilson, who's at the Convention Centre in Pretoria. Over to you, Liezle.
Good afternoon, Unati. Good afternoon to our viewers. As you correctly mentioned, we're live at the CSIR ICC in Pretoria for the Science Forum South Africa 2023. 2,800 delegates, in fact, over 2,800 delegates expected to take part of the discussions and debates, focusing on various issues under the theme Igniting Conversations about Science, People, Partnerships and Priorities for a Decade Plan. So we're looking at the hive of activity that's obviously just happening behind me. Registrations are taking place. It's happening between the 6th and the 8th of December. Today, in fact, is day one of that. So by looking at the role of science, some of the issues that have come to the fore, some of the themes and topics that will also be explored under the main theme is the energy crisis, climate change, food security and technology for South Africa, the continent and globally as well. So to take this discussion further and to find out more, let me bring in the Deputy Director General for the Department of Science and Innovation, Dan du Toit. Dan, good afternoon and thank you for your time with us here on the SABC at this hour. Perhaps you could just speak to the significance of the Science Forum and how it's grown over the years.
Thank you, and thank you very much for this opportunity. We firmly believe at the Department of Science and Innovation, and if we are going to unleash the potential of science to make the qualitative difference in the South African economy and society we aspire to, then science cannot be preserved from a select few. Science has to be inclusive and science has to be by and for everyone. And that is what this Science Forum is all about. It is about bringing anyone and everyone with an interest in science together to discuss and work together to make science work for South Africa. You mentioned 2,800 registered participants. We are now much more closer to 4,000. And I would also encourage your viewers, this forum is open to anyone. No registration fees, no qualifications. Anyone has a contribution to make and they're most welcome to join us over the next 3 days here at the CSIR in Tshwane.
All right, so DDG, speaking about it being an open public science forum at this point, walk us through the program. Walk us through some of the highlights that you're expecting this time around. It seems to be jam-packed as well.
Yeah, it is jam-packed. So over the next 3 days, we will have 60 individual debates. And the focus is on debates. So it's not long, boring PowerPoint presentations, it's discussion where the audience is actively invited to contribute. And we are going to be looking at all the key science policy issues which confront countries like South Africa. So for example, how do we invest better in developing the next generation of South African scientists? How do we use science and innovation to kickstart our economy, make, for example, our mining and agricultural sectors more competitive, or to unleash the potential of new areas such as artificial intelligence or the circular economy? And then we're also going to be looking at international partnerships. That's a very important part of our program because science progresses if one works together across borders, and how we, for example, advance the Pan-African agenda in science will be amongst the topics considered.
You're speaking about cooperation and partnerships. How would you weigh in on South Africa's contribution to the world of science, perhaps in a post-COVID environment?
South African science punches above its weight. Whether it's in the fight against infectious diseases, you mentioned COVID-19, or, for example, flagship frontier scientific disciplines like astronomy. South African scientists are at the forefront of the global enterprise to expand scientific knowledge. And I think it's something we as South Africans should be proud of. What our key mission now is at the Department of Science and Innovation is how do we harness, how do we use the scientific expertise so we translate that into concrete interventions which make a difference in our economy and our society.
Absolutely. You spoke about it not being elitist or technocratic. Yeah. What is the role of education at this point? And when we look at the role that education can play, given that the jobs of the future don't really exist at this point, what do you think some of those investments and initiatives are going to look at?
It's exactly that what we want to achieve, and that's why speaking to you is so important. Sometimes science can sometimes scare people. What we want to destroy is the image that science is for crazy professors in white coats. We want to excite, we want to entice our youth into following scientific careers and convince them that this is exciting. Because as you correctly say, we don't know what the future holds, but we know that future will be exciting, and that it's by studying maths and physics may be boring, but if you study maths and physics, I mean, you will be designing robots. You will be understanding the origins of the universe. So this event is just part of a broader effort, which is very important for our Minister Nzimande, and that is to build a national consensus and a national excitement on the role of science.
Well, thank you very much, Dan du Toit, for joining us at this hour. Dan du Toit, of course, is the Deputy Director General at the Department of Science and Innovation. I'm actually now also going to bring in Professor Mike Sitege. He's going to be unpacking the Nuclear for Peaceful Use. That report has just been released. Prof. Mike joins us now to chat further. Prof, good afternoon, and also thank you to you for your time at this hour. We hear the word nuclear and the connotations associated. We heard from Dan as well, the DDG, speaking about the connotations around science and technology and men in lab coats, white coats. Walk us through what the report has unearthed. I mean, it's obviously broad, but when we look at the peaceful use initiatives, we look at, how it can contribute to South Africa's growth as well. What's been unearthed through this report?
Thank you so kindly for this opportunity. This research, development and innovation on peaceful use of nuclear technologies actually come at a good time. It coincides with COP28, as you know, happening in Dubai. It actually speaks to what the report is unpacking. To say nuclear energy is critical in terms of making sure that we've got decarbonization of energy, in terms of making sure that we can contribute to reducing the climate disaster that we are seeing here, the hunger, and then of course the soil erosions, and then of course the natural disasters that are happening. So this nuclear technologies for peaceful uses, you can unpack it in several themes. And the report states what the legislation exists, the existence of the legislation in South Africa. It speaks to what we are doing at the moment, the infrastructure, the human capital, but also the strengths, weaknesses, and then of course threats and opportunities. So in that, then we make recommendations. Yeah. The recommendations are speaking to agriculture and food security, wherein we demonstrate that nuclear has already done a lot, and perhaps we should actually take it forward to actually include it to a broader farming community. Because as we realize, farming is actually science, most of it. And nuclear technologies using stable isotopes and other forms of soil detection, how you use your fertilizers, is very critical. In health, of course, nuclear is very, very important. And South Africa is also a lead there. We have several structures such as NEXA, Itemba Labs, other private roles, and the nuclear medicine research infrastructures contributing to how we should be treating cancer in a precise manner that would actually minimize the toxicities whilst being efficient in extending the lifespan and the quality of life. And then of course we go on to speak about radiation protection, wherein actually we're demonstrating that as we do this, radiation protection is intact, and again we open up to speaking to the private sector, the government, and the regulators speaking together harmoniously. And then of course, as we go to the water, we are saying that water is already good, but already we should think of us being a dry continent, that we should use nuclear energy to, for instance, do desalination so that we can have water security. And of course, needless to say that we can also know what is happening with the water below the soil. And then of course, as you step to the energy in itself, energy is contagious, but in fact, we are saying that we need to have a model that will actually speak to the economic situation currently, the population, and let us not be irresponsible to say that energy mix is important. It must be wind, it must be solar, but nuclear is also core to it. As we do nuclear, but how much of nuclear do we need of it? And that modeling will actually tell us that yes, you are going to need nuclear to support the other infrastructures, but nuclear also at the as well. And then it will also help in the fact that we were once in the late using the pebble bed model reactors with a new small modular reactors. The small modular reactors are important in that we can actually put them on the side, and they are much more efficient, and then we should see how do we really engage in this. And with this report, we are saying that yes, we are supportive of this measure, and then I'm glad that the government and the country is already starting to reignite, of course, that small modular reactors, as is the IAEA, for instance. When you speak about industry as a whole, yes, we are saying that it must actually be a coordinated industry and not in a haphazard manner. And then, of course, the key recommendations then that we are making is that nuclear has got a strength. Nuclear has contributed. We are part and parcel of the formation of the IAEA, and we sit in the board of the IAEA. So by that, we are in the lead, and we should influence this, and we shouldn't lose that lead. But in so doing, in the country, various departments, for instance, Department of Agriculture, Health, and DSI, they must as well put in their planning, in their policies, the nuclear strategy. And then for that to happen, together with the Department of Minerals and Energy, which is actually by act responsible for this, they must then have a central desk. Then that central desk will coordinate all the activities, so we know the strengths of each other, and therefore in that way we can use nuclear very well, and then use the disadvantages that are there to improve on where we can. And that would also allow the collaborations, because between universities and the centers, that would also allow us to maximize the projects that we are undertaking with the IAEA, so that they can be beneficial and not just end as research projects, but implemented at the industry side to benefit the communities.
Well, Prof, you succinctly, highlighted what was in the report, and I think another issue that comes to the fore is the issue of inclusivity, which is what the DDG also spoke about. What's the role of women representation in these discussions and in these policy frameworks?
There is Women in Nuclear Forum, and that is a very active forum, and it seeks to actually say, as we do human capacity, we must have women leaders that are there. For instance, as we have noticed when the report was launched, we had the president of NRADI, who is a woman, the president of the South African Society of Nuclear Medicine, which is a woman. We have got the NLO, the National Liaison Officer of the connecting the IAEA in South Africa, that is a woman, and there are many other, the CEO of the NNR, the regulator, being a woman, and also at SABC being a woman. So the women are taking lead in this, and I'm glad for this, because women tend to be inclusive as they work as well, and that's what we need, and that's important. As we educate the women, we educate the nation.
Yes.
Perhaps when it's a man, it remains with a man.